Welcome back. Today we're going to be converting between decimals, percents, and fractions, and percents to decimals to percents to fractions, and all the way back and forth. They are all different ways of representing a portion of things. And the key to this is in the language, which you'll see here in a minute. So converting between percents, decimals, fractions, and back and forth. It's going to be easy. If you notice up here, I just did this so you know kind of where we're going from decimals to fractions and fractions to percents, then we'll go back and forth. But the key is language. Understanding what the symbolism means will really help unlock this concept for you. And I'm not going to do a whole lot of examples, and I'm not going to do a practical application. There's so many of these, and it really depends on what you're going into. So you'll have to consult your instructor or the textbook or whatever you're working in to get the particulars of it. But this is just to help you with the concept, to grasp the idea so you can apply it wherever you are, whatever you're doing. So here we're going to start over here with this. Most people say that's 0.45. Well, and so it is, but 0.45. So you can say, well, what's the answer to this question? 45. It has to be 0.45. Get it? Well, that doesn't help you, 0.45. You really need to get to the place where even if you say 0.45, you really understand what that means. The decimal place in the 45. It's actually 45. If you cover up the decimal, it's 45. 45 what? Well, the last number reveals, I guess, what it would be, as it were, the last name of this number. So it would be 45 tenths hundredths. So it would be 45 hundredths. So if you know, even if you say 0.45, if you know that that's 45 hundredths, then you've already answered the question of, well, what's it going to be as a fraction, 45 hundredths? Well, it's like 2/3. 2/3, it'd be the same 45 hundredths. So we're just going to write that, 45 hundredths. See, that's easy. You just converted it to a fraction just by saying this number by its proper name, just by calling it by its proper name. You've already converted it in your mind just through your language, 45 hundredths. Oh, 45 hundredths. Okay. What about percent? We're following the black arrows for now. Going to a percent. Well, that's where the other language comes in. So if we come over here, notice I have percent, but I have the words slashed, per and cent. Well, per means something and cent means something. That's why we smash those two little words together to make a big word. Percent. Per, we see it in times that we use it like miles per hour, feet per second, whatever. But the per means out of. Miles out of a gallon of gas. Feet out of every second of time that elapses. And then cent means 100. 100 cents in a dollar. 1 century has 100 years in it. That's why we call it that. So percent just means out of 100. Interestingly enough, if we go down to a fraction bar, this is 3/4, not 3/4. If we did 3/4, it would look something like this. 3/4. Yeah, I know that's kind of dorky. But the word over never helps you. 3/4. How do you over something? I want to over the number 3/4 and then come up with some mathematical answer. Over is not a mathematical function. So if you can get rid of that in your vocabulary, that will help. So over doesn't help you, even though I said over on one of the previous videos. Anyway, maybe you can find it. 3, then you have your fraction bar, which can also mean out of. If you're comparing things, 3 out of 4 dentists surveyed recommend blah. There's always that one dentist that doesn't recommend anything. That's kind of weird. So 3 out of 4. It could also mean per. This line here can also mean divided by, which will come in handy later. Hint, hint. And then it can mean other things like that. It can be just the word to, like we're comparing 3 apples to 4 oranges, or something like that, for ratios and proportions, which we'll get to later on another video. But we get these kind of things that line means, but it never means over. So if we go over here, 45 hundredths, 45 out of 100, 45 out of 100. Hopefully that makes sense. Or you could say, instead of saying out of 100, you could say 45 per cent. See that? The fraction bar and the 100 together make up percent. So this blue part here, 45%, this blue equals the same meaning as this blue. So this is a percent sign, so is this in a manner of speaking. But if you can remember remember that, that will make your life easier, because when you look at that, 45 out of 100 or 45%, then you've already converted it to a percent, again, just by understanding the language. So 45 hundredths, 45 out of 100, well 45%, this is already 45%. Boom. Now the way your textbook will show you and your teacher will undoubtedly show you, which is great, and you need to know this too, but if you just take this decimal over here, and you take it for this times 100, decimal goes there, this goes here, and then that becomes 45, the whole number, 45%. So converting decimals to percent, another way to remember it is just to zoop your decimal 2 toward the percent sign. 2 zeros. 2 little things, almost zeros almost. But 2 times toward the percent sign you want to change it to. If you're going from percent to decimal, you move 2 away from the percent sign, because you want to go away from percent. You want to move on to decimal, so you go away from the percent. So you move 2 over there. So it's 2 either way. That's a shortcut. Well, let's try this one. 3 is not 0.3. It's 3 what? 3 tenths. So you can say 3 tenths. So we have 3 out of 10. So we just put it there. 3 out of 10. Now it's not out of 100, but there's some shortcuts here. If we needed to get this to 100, to 100, all we would have to do really is add a 0. We added a 0. Now it's 100, but we would have to add a 0 on the top too, because we had to take the bottom times 10, like you learned on the addition to fraction videos. If the denominator is times 10, then you got to take the numerator times 10 to keep it numerically, the value numerically the same. So now we have 30 out of 100. So now we know that that's 30%, because it's 30 out of 100, 30 per 100, 30%. There you go. Now if we did the arrow zoop method, we would go here, we would do 2 zoops. That's where it was, this is where it is. And notice it's just aching for a 0. We've done that before, and I'll do that again because it just works so well. And sure enough it is. So it's 30, and as you move it over there, it becomes a percent. Now if we were to take this decimal here and go twice over here, sure enough we'd have the 0.3, the 3 tenths, without the 0, that we would have over here. See what I mean? It's easy, it's just all in the language. Well, what if we have something like this? Well, 2 and 5 tenths. 2 and 5 tenths. 2.5. But 2 and 5 tenths. Well, then we would come over here and we would have 2 and 5 tenths. Now what I'm going to do for the sake of the space of the board is, I can show you right here, 2 and 5 tenths. We could work it with it that way, or we could go ahead and simplify that to 2 and 1/2. So I'm going to go ahead and put 1/2 here. Although it would work the same, the numbers would just be a little bit bigger. 1/2. Well, 2 and 1/2. Well, that's a mixed number. It doesn't. It's a mixed number. And if we wanted to make that a fraction, just without being a mixed number, just a fraction entirely, we would start here and just convert it. Add here, multiply here, and then add there. It would end up being 5 halves. If you needed it a fraction and not a mixed number, then it would be 5 halves for this. But how do we get that to a percent? Well, it's easy. You make it to this, like we just did here, an improper fraction, and then you just do what it says. There's a couple ways. I'm going to show you another way after this quickly, but if you can convert it to an improper fraction like this, and then just do what it says. 5 over 2, no. 5 out of 2, that's true, but that's kind of weird to get 5 out of 2. 5 per 2, that could be true. 5 divided by 2. And then we just follow what it says, 5 divided by 2. So if we have 5 divided by 2, and put your decimals there, remember, so you don't forget. Okay, it'll go 2, and that'll be 4 times 4. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. And you probably know this already. I'm using numbers that are easy so you can focus on the procedure. So when you get to a number that's not easy, you still remember the steps. That's 10, 0, and 0. So 2 and 50 hundredths, or 2 and 5 tenths, which brings us right back here. See, these just go back and forth. So if you had to go from fraction to a decimal to a fraction, this is how you do it. And we can do the 2 zoop method from here. If you didn't have this, you just had here to here, you could do the 2 zoop method, and that would equal 250%. That's where it was, that's where it is. You could do that here. That's where it was, that's where it is, and go right into the 250%. So there's different ways you can go depending on where you start and what you're given, but it all will come out. It all will come out the same. Another thing you could do is you could just leave your whole number 2, you could just deal with that fraction, be it 1/2 or 5/10, and that would get you to a 0.5 or a 5/10, which would be here, and then you could go from there if you weren't given this, if you were just given this. So it kind of depends on where you started, but it all just is integrated, and I want you to be able to see that. Lastly, I'm going to go ahead and show you this here. Well, what if we just had a fraction, we didn't start with a decimal, we started with a fraction that wasn't real easy mathematically. It wasn't a 1/10 or a 100th, so we can't just go right into it. It wasn't real easy, well, this is obviously a half, 50%, 250%. Well, what if it's something stranger like this? Well, you do the same thing that I illustrated from here. You would just divide that. So this would equal 3 divided by 8. Again, get your decimals in place. And then you would just divide. Okay, so it would be 3. 3 times 8 is 24. 6, bring down your 0. 8 times 7 is 56, which will give you 4. Bring down your other 0. And 8 times 5, and that would get you to where you're done. Yay. It's supposed to be a smiley face. So this would be 0.375, or 375 thousandths, and that would be our decimal. So now this brought us back to here. Now that we have a decimal, now we know what to do with it. We do the double Zoop method there, and we can go here. So it'd be 37 and 5/10%. And hopefully that'll give you some idea there. But the tricks again is in the language. Remember that percent automatically means out of 100. By definition, it has to be out of 100. And over here, the fraction bar, 3 fraction bar 4, 3 out of 4, 3 per 4, 3 divided by 4, 3 to 4. And there's other things, but remember the language and try to get in your head to say it that way. Get rid of over and realize that the fraction bar with 100 is percent, ever as much as this is percent. Anyway, hopefully that'll kind of clue you into some things and help you go back and forth. And talk to you next time.